I'm happy to see the Gateway pundit back in the press room. Caroline Leavitt and Donald Trump have invited them back in because heaven forbid we get different points of view in the media. I'm just one point of view. And so I thank you guys for popping in here and spending a little time with me and getting a little bit of news. I always try and find like the news that you really need to know every day. There's a lot of stuff going on. Some of it I think is kind of trivial and some of it is more telling. Here's Caroline Leavitt. Watch this. Welcome to the Doug TenNapel channel.
Thanks, Caroline. So what does it say that the Democrats, while they couldn't stand for Americans or stand for victims, they stood for war and clapped for 5 more years of war?
Yeah, the president addressed that last night, I think, when he called out Senator Elizabeth Warren and said that, again, as I said in my opening speech, very telling that the Democrats refused to clap for American people and American interests and American priorities, but they did clap for the country of Ukraine, which, by the way, the president's working very hard to end that war. So
Trump probably will end that war, but the bigger picture is this is like a cultural mockery of Democrats. Because they sat on their hands. And I mean, the Republicans, they trotted out this 13-year-old kid with 13 brain cancer operations who was made an honorary Secret Service agent, and they couldn't get the Democrats to move. They're sitting on their hands. They brought out Laken Riley's living family members after she was killed by an illegal. The Democrats, they would not move. But man, Trump says, how much money we gave to Ukraine, they're cheering. And Trump looks right at Elizabeth Warren, who's clapping, and goes, I'll bet you want us to keep that war going for 5 more years. And she goes, yeah, and she's clapping. That's a big tell, okay? Whether if you want the war to go on or not, we found what makes the Democrats clap, and it's war. Not even a war where we were being attacked. If we're being attacked, I'd be like, yeah, let's get them. But if it's another country, okay, they won't expend any calories to stand up and clap if it's for Americans, but they will spend all their calories and goodwill on keeping us sending missiles and drones so that more 24-year-old Ukrainians can shoot more 24-year-old Russians.
So Democrats should be applauding him for actually doing something about it.
A follow-up on that, if I can. You've spoken recently about how what happened in the Oval Office last week gave Americans an inside look into behind discussions with Zelenskyy. Is this how he treated Joe Biden and just treated him disrespectfully and received billions of dollars?
Well, it's a very interesting question. I don't know if anybody in here asked my predecessor who stood at this podium about that, but
because we all know now that Zelenskyy was pretty demanding of Biden, and Biden said, hey, you're not thankful enough. And Caroline Leavitt said, I don't know, because no one in the last 4 years, none of them asked the question of Karine Jean-Pierre about Zelenskyy and his relationship and how he treated Biden. None of them asked because they weren't curious.
There was a report from NBC News that President Biden also got increasingly frustrated with President Zelenskyy when he was handing out blank checks and President Zelenskyy kept asking for more. Joe Biden was quite frustrated with that. So again, as I've said repeatedly, Friday revealed the frustrations that this administration has had in closed-door negotiations with the Ukrainians. However, President Zelenskyy did put out a statement yesterday, which we believe is a positive step forward. And National Security Advisor Mike Waltz has been talking to his Ukrainian counterparts. And so we're in the midst of this, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, basically, Zelenskyy has had to cave. He's going to have to cave on Trump because you're not going to win this war. Now, the best thing he can negotiate, right? Because he's not going to be able to fight Russia by himself. And Europe's no good. What is France and Germany and the UK, Keir Starmer, going to help Zelenskyy? And if we back out, they're going to make up for our half of the 115 or whatever billion dollars. They don't even have the economic ability to throw that kind of money at them. The only way this war ends, and there's any kind of even a survival for Zelenskyy, is if he ties Trump into this. I think we should actually cut bait and just cut it clear, at this point. But only because it would probably help them have to resolve it faster and be even more peaceful. But I don't want to, kind of overstay. I don't really know. We're going to do the $2 billion in U.S. taxpayer money. This is kind of an obscure Supreme Court story. I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but I will read you the actual Supreme Court document. But this is about the money, $2 billion that we've already guaranteed to pay USAID for work they've already done. So we owe it to them. And Trump stopped the payment, which I support. And then it went to that lower Democrat judge that said he ordered Trump to pay. And so this is an overstep of a judge on the presidency. Well, it went to the Supreme Court, and only 4 of the conservatives ruled with Trump. That means that the majority, the liberals, Amy Coney Barrett went and joined them. And I don't know if it was Chief Justice Roberts or who else it was that went and joined them. I'll tell you why I don't think this is as big of a deal as the media is making it out to be today. I don't believe it commits us to continue to pay in the future because we've stopped all of those programs. So if you stop all of the USAID programs, you don't have to pay them. This judge was just upset that we wouldn't pay for work that was already done, that we had already owed.
To do with USAID, and Shannon Bream is on that. Shannon, what happened?
Okay, so this is one of the very first things from this term to make it fully to some kind of decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. And this is about foreign aid that was ordered to be paid out by a lower court judge. There were groups who take in USAID money, and they had gone and said, listen, this freeze is harming us. And they went to the district court judge, that lower court level, and he said, yes, the government has to pay this out. It went through the appeals, got to the Supreme Court. They, by a 5-4 vote today, say they won't put that judge's order on hold. But they've told that lower court, now you need to explain to the Trump administration exactly what money you want them to pay out. The dissenters, led by Justice Alito, also with Thomas, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh, which means that Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Barrett did side with the Democrat appointees on the court. They've said they're dissenting. And let me read you a little bit of this. They say the court makes a most unfortunate misstep that rewards an act of judicial hubris and imposes a $2 billion penalty on American taxpayers. They say the relief that's been ordered to pay this money out is an extreme response. It says a federal court has many tools to address a party's supposed malfeasance. Self-aggrandizement of its jurisdiction is not one of them. In plain English, they think the lower court got it wrong and was way out of bounds to order this money paid out. They say it's going to be to the harm of the American taxpayer. They've now said to that lower court, explain to the Trump administration exactly what they have to do. But the order stands. The money's got to go out.
So this is a dissent that she's quoting there, that's by Sam Alito, and was, confirmed agreed to by Clarence Thomas, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh. Now, here's the article over at, the SCOTUS blog. Supreme Court denies Trump request to block $2 billion in a foreign aid payment for USAID. I'm not going to read all this article, but I am going to read you the relevant part of it, okay? A divided Supreme Court on Wednesday turned down, that's today, a request by the Trump administration to lift an order by a federal judge in Washington, D.C., that had directed the State Department and the U.S. Agency for International Development, that's USAID, to pay nearly $2 billion in foreign aid reimbursements for work that has already been done. I have not heard other people report on that it's number one, that it's a reimbursement for something they've already paid for and for work that has already been done. So they're just making us honor an agreement that we said we would pay, right? So Trump says, no, don't pay even for the work that's already been done. That's where I think this is not a demand that there's ongoing payments because we've stopped them from doing that work. Now, here's Sean Davis with just the quote. This is from the dissent by Alito. Today, the court, and Shannon Bream already read this, so I'm just going to be redundant here. Today, the court makes a most unfortunate misstep, this is by Alito, that rewards an act of judicial hubris and imposes a $2 billion penalty on American taxpayers. So they're saying that $2 billion is something that the taxpayers shouldn't have to pay. The district court, that's D.C., has made plain its frustration with the government, with the Trump administration, and respondents raised serious concerns about non-payment for completed work. I think that's key. It's a very serious concern that we have non-payment for completed work, even though I think all the work is a scam. It's illegit, but he's just restating the facts. That's reasonable. But the relief ordered is quite simply too extreme of a response. So it's too much of a response to force Trump, a president, to have to pay U.S. aid. A federal court, that is the D.C. court and even the Supreme Court, has many tools to address a party's supposed nonfeasance. Self-aggrandizement, now that's what he's accusing both Amy Coney Barrett in their positive appraisal, that saying that the Supreme Court or that a court should be allowed to force the executive branch to do something like the president. Self-aggrandizement of its jurisdiction is not one of them. So that should not be, that's what he's accusing them of. I would chart a different path than the court does today, so I must respectfully dissent. So he's accusing the liberal, including Amy Coney Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts, who joined the other three, Sotomayor and the other two, or whatever, Ketanji Brown Jackson and Kagan, that those five, he's saying it's self-aggrandizement. That is, they're inflating the court with a job that they shouldn't be doing. And I kind of agree with that vocabulary. I think Alito is dead on that. This isn't over yet. The Trump administration, they still have to have some back and forth with that D.C. court, and the D.C. court has to explain to the Trump administration exactly what they expect them to do. I don't believe this applies to ongoing forward work by USAID, which has all been stopped. I believe this is just about paying for work that has already been done. I'm Doug in exile.